Okay, right. Just a quick little thing from the previous video, looking at the position, orientation and scale. Looking at the example here, where we're using the object position or the light position and fake normals. With just a sphere, you can see it's working, but it works really well where you can see where you've got your multiple objects in the scene. And so if I move this around, you can see the lighting is always coming from that position here that we've specified in our material. So just a little another example of that working. Okay, so in this video we're going to have a look at world position. So what we just looked at in the previous video was object position. World position does the same thing or similar thing of giving us world position data, but it does it per pixel rather than per object. So object position, this is going to be exactly the same for all parts of the object, and we get a single flat value, which in this case is very low, but yeah, it's everywhere on the object has the same object position. World position is per pixel, and so you can see if I make this a box or something, pixels going up, anything above 0 is going to be starting to be in blue, anything this side of the axis is going to be in green, and anything this side of this axis is going to be in red. And so we're getting the per pixel world position of our object or of our material. How is this useful? Well, in lots and lots and lots of ways. We can use it as a way of doing projection textures. It's base color, no, it's emissive. There we go. So this is a projection. So here we're taking the world position, we're masking out red and green. That just gives us the information for effectively top down. We've masked out the X and Y axes, we're ignoring anything in Z. So effectively we're getting the information for the two flat axes. And then these are values, they just go from 0 to infinite. That's how the world position is defined, 0 at the center and the values going off in either direction. Well, if we think about what UVs are, and we'll cover UVs more in the next section of videos as well, but they're just numbers that go up. So 0, 0 in the corner, 1, 1 over here, but they keep going up and up and up. So we can actually just use our world position data as UV data. And so we end up with a sort of a projection texture. And if I change my scale, that's going to adjust the sort of the tiling of my texture. So very, very low values, goes very white here, is actually tiling the texture over every centimeter. That's not very useful. If I plug in 50, it's now tiling the texture over 50 centimeters. 128, whatever, 256. And this is really useful. We'll use this for a lot of terrain rendering. Any kind of top-down projection works really well for terrain. We can also do horizontal projections. So if I change this to a red-blue, now it's projecting along the XZ axis. If we wanted to do multiple projections on different sides, we'd have to combine them together, which Unreal provides for us here. And we'll have a look at kind of defining this from first principles as well. But basically, we're projecting this axis, we're then projecting this axis, and we're also projecting the top-down axis, and then we're just blending between them based on the direction those faces are facing. But very, very useful. Yeah, terrain blending, a lot of water materials, things like that, where you've got multiple meshes that might want to have consistency and cohesion from one mesh to the other. If you UV them, you need to make sure those UVs line up perfectly, whereas if you do it in world space, you can just get away with whatever mesh you want, because it's not using the UVs of the mesh, it's using a projected texture. Very, very useful. If I just create a quick texture object in here, and we'll use this strange checkerboard. As good as anything. If I preview this, I probably need to actually give it an output as well. So if I multiply and do preview like this, this is now an XYZ projection, and you can see it's projecting on all axes. If I change this to a sphere, we do get some smearing. So here it's blending between the different projections. Now something like a checkerboard, it's going to be quite bad. You're going to see some quite bad distortion here. For something like a noise, a rock texture, stuff like that, you probably aren't going to notice this so much. Okay, one thing worth noting, this is more expensive than UVing your objects. If there is a reason to do it with the projection, then that's fine. It's not so expensive that we can't use it, but I wouldn't do, if I was building like a building or a house or something like that, I wouldn't just use a projection for like the brick texture. That sounds expensive. It's better to use the base UVs for that. But if you wanted to then add some variation and say change up what the material's doing in world space, that's where this would then be useful. So it's good, it's very powerful, it has a lot of functionality we want to use, but at the same time it's not a replacement for UVing your objects. You want to make sure you still do that properly and not use this where you don't need to, because it's a little bit more expensive than UVing would have been. Okay, that's world position.